Greetings. So today I'll be taking a little bit of a different approach than I have in previous videos where I conducted a segment and made it last about 10 plus minutes in some cases. Today I've got multiple different topics to speak on. And surprisingly enough, the first one isn't going to be all that political. I'll be speaking about Oklahoma and the University of Texas's decision to leave the Big 12 and make their way for the SEC. I will be talking about the state of true socialism in America and how corporations benefit more than regular people. And then I will be talking about what it means to be liberal versus what it means to be conservative. And I'll be taking a dive on the differences between those two as well as their definitions and how they will affect us in the near future. So the University of Texas, along with the University of Oklahoma, have decided to leave the Big 12 and join the SEC. The SEC is by far the best football conference in college, and I think that this comes in the wake of the NCAA ruling that college athletes are now allowed to profit from their own likeness. My uncle seems to believe that this will ultimately benefit the SEC and that UT and OU no longer want to lose recruits to the SEC in terms of the football program. I believe that UT would probably pick up a strong advantage on A&M. Now, I'm no football fanatic. However, I am a fan of the idea that would come after UT and OU decide to join the SEC. They've got contracts with the Big 12 until 2025. Now they could possibly buy themselves out. However, the president of the University of Texas has claimed that he would like to honor their contract with the Big 12 until 2025 and ultimately give the Big 12 time to plan as to whether or not they're going to disband or if they're going to include new schools. I don't think that they would disband. I think that they would wind up including, a new school such as North Texas, which has been doing quite a bit better as of lately. And then, we've got other independent schools such as Brigham Young, Notre Dame, etc. However, as a Texas Tech fan, I personally like the idea that we could make our way towards the Pac-12. My sophomore year, we won the men's field and track national championship. We made it to the Final Four, to the national championship actually, only to lose to Virginia in the final minutes of overtime. So, yeah, I like the idea of being in the Pac-12. I think that we'd have a lot to offer them. Our baseball team also consistently makes the World Series. We missed it this past season. However, that doesn't frighten me. I think that joining the Pac-12 would behoove us. And also being from Austin, I would like to have less rivalistic, if you might call that, blood with UT every time I step foot on that campus, which I do frequently. So this report came out from the San Antonio Report .org about how basically people were deceiving the CARES Act, big corporations. This guy, I believe, is worth around $1 billion, and he requested about $5.9 million to keep his people on payroll. Now, hang on. He's a billionaire. That one should get you from the start. If you're a billionaire and you have to keep people on payroll, this is the true capitalist in me. You don't go to the government for money to pay people whenever you already have the money. He's just being a greedy shit. And he has a lot of contracts through the federal government. So whenever he double dipped in the pot and got more money than he truly needed, He was not held accountable. All that you're going to hear about this is what you read in the paper, basically, or the modern paper, which is a website called the San Antonio Report.org. And we saw this in 2008 as Wall Street, essentially buys our politicians, who then deregulate Wall Street as they make these fucking mistakes, crash the fucking economy, and then Obama comes in and he's supposed to be the wartime president. And let's be fair, he did bring our economy back. However, he bailed out the same criminals that crashed the economy in the first place. I mean, this is socialism. This is where you have a major corporation buying our politicians, and then the politicians are quick to grant them the funding that they request so that they don't have to, so that this money doesn't have to come out of their own pockets. I mean, I think that the cost of labor, the cost of operating a business, whenever you are worth this much money, you shouldn't receive a loan anywhere close to that. It should come directly out of your fucking pockets. It should come directly out of your portfolio, not the government. Now, if you run a small business, you need funding to keep your business going while your business essentially has to shut down while you want to pay and maintain employees. That's different. But I mean, theoretically, we would just have consistent checks going out to people, not how much did we receive? We received around $3,000 throughout all of COVID, unless you were on unemployment. I mean, unemployment didn't pay the bills for some people. And yeah, I mean, it's fucking disgusting, honestly, what the rich get away with after we have allowed them time and time again to buy our politicians, as opposed to, maybe not allowing them to buy our politicians and then having our politicians directly represent us and not large corporations. So, I mean, this guy, he's a fucking crook, basically. I'll say it time and time again. We also saw at the beginning of COVID where one of these major airline companies got large PPP loans as well. And then they wound up firing a bunch of their staff anyway and running off with that money. Excuse me? And they weren't held accountable? No. But if you're a middle-class person and you're trying to evade taxes so that you can actually continue to feed your family, then you'll get thrown in jail. Then you'll get locked up. These guys get the fuck away with it. Unless they pissed off the wrong person. It's the only time that they don't get away with this shit. It's sickening. If y'all are familiar with Kyle Kalinske from Secular Talk, I frequently draw a lot, if not most, of my inspiration from that guy, along with other guys such as David Pakman from the David Pakman Show, and then I think it was Brian Tyler Cohen, who does No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. It's a podcast. He also does a lot of clips, essentially debunking some of the lunacy and hypocrisy in primarily conservative politicians, unless you're Joe Manchin. And yeah, so basically Kyle Kalinske reflected upon his second video ever, and honestly, it was really interesting because I wanted to talk about essentially what he talked about in his second video anyway, and I wanted to go into the difference between the term conservative versus the term liberal, especially in Texas. To say that you're conservative, it's like a big honeypot for some people. I mean, even if you vote blue, or if you deemed yourself to be progressive, you also like to be able to say, oh, well, I've got some pretty conservative values. And I must say, there are some things that, I deem myself to be a little bit conservative on as well. However, I don't claim to be a conservative. I don't claim to be fiscally conservative. It's just in terms of, my upbringing and my heritage. However, I'm not out there justifying the Confederate flag or anything like that. It has a little bit more to do with, I guess, how I carry myself and the things and activities that I engage in, which typically are pretty basic and Southern in some cases. So the definition of conservative as an adjective is averse to change or innovation and holding traditional values. And Kyle Kalinske honestly made a very good point. If you were conservative, as he said, in the 50s, you didn't want change. Essentially, you didn't want black people to vote. And today, I'm not sure, a lot of conservatives, they don't want action on climate change. They don't want progress. They don't want to see things in our country actually strengthen. And I think a lot of these people are honestly kind of blind in the sense that, some of my friends who vote red or voted red, I'll talk to them about this and what are we really doing with our military? We're spending a lot of money on our military. Medicare for all would save us money. If you want to use the term fiscally conservative, that is fiscally conservative. And that's also very socialistic. But then again, Medicare for all, it's socialism. So, yeah, I mean, to be conservative back in the 1800s was even worse. You're fucking pro-slavery. However, there was a shift in about the 50s or the 60s where the South was primarily Democratic. The South has a rich labor history. And yeah, I mean, they needed people to actually represent working men for the most part. And it's actually really disgusting how it switches because, I mean, if I'm reading everything right, the shift was cultural. In the South, people did not like change. They were very culturally conservative, not so much fiscally in a sense. They're hard workers, but I don't think that being hardworking should mean that you're conservative by any means. Some of the hardest working people aren't conservative. It's just what you have to do to get by. You have to be hardworking, and I don't think that there should be many cases where somebody shouldn't have to work hard. Even if you're mentally ill or if you're on disability, you're still going to work hard in your daily life, regardless of whether or not you're actually working for a paycheck, just to feel better and, feel more accomplished. If you're on disability and if you're mentally ill or something like that, depends on your disability. I mean, a lot of those people are, they like to run. They're in the gym constantly. They like to take pride in their daily lives. And yeah, I mean, I just think that the idea of modern conservatism is, it's really ignorant if you think about it. Whereas, here, let me look this up. So, the definition of liberal, willing to respect or accept behavior or opinions different from one's own, open to new ideas. Now, there are a couple things I want to touch up on this. The modern corporate DNC is only socially liberal. They don't, oftentimes they aren't open to the idea of, say, campaign finance reform. I mean, they're inherently corrupt, but whenever it comes to Gay Pride Month, they're, waving a fucking rainbow banner. Even companies like, I don't remember if y'all, I don't know if y'all remember seeing this, but we had a defense contractor, Raytheon, change their Twitter logo to a Pride Raytheon logo. Meanwhile, they were giving money to Mitch McConnell, who actively is against LGBTQ rights. So I think that modern liberalism, or as some people call it, neoliberalism, is pretty. It's deceiving. It's really fucking deceiving. And I don't call myself really a liberal. I call myself, a progressive, or, a social democrat. Sometimes I'll throw out the term social libertarian whenever I talk about how the government can be very socialistic and help working people, but still it doesn't have to be nearly as large. Another definition as a noun: a supporter of policies that are socially progressive and promote social welfare. That's the point I've been trying to get at. I hate being called liberal by your modern conservative or your modern Republican man, because that's not the truth. There are a lot of people who are corporate fucking liberals that don't believe in, some of the more progressive policies that I believe in, such as Medicare for all, ending the wars, pulling us out of Afghanistan, limiting what corporations can and can't exist in terms of what their business is. So if you are a health insurance company, no, we need to dissolve you. You don't need to be fucking there. You're predatory. We need a single payer system. I'll say it time and time again. The government, medicine, doctors, they need to be nationalized. They need to be owned and operated by the government. And I think that whenever you look back to the invention or the discovery of agriculture, that's when people were finally able to settle. They were less nomadic. They weren't off hunting all the time. And then you had people that were able to specialize as they settled in various different things, whether or not you were working on the farm, etc. And then you had a town doctor. And that man was doing his job. His job was medicine, treating people. You didn't have like somebody in between in the Times Square saying, hey man, pay me and then I'll take you to the doctor. And then you got to pay me some more you got to give me a copay and all that shit. Like, excuse me? No, it's like you've got a guy like hanging out by, the doctor's office. Hey, this is a doctor's office. Are you feeling like shit? Come on in. Or you have the EMT types, which are able to go out and help that person that might have been hunting, you name it, and get them to the doctor. Yes, the way I look at it, to be quote unquote liberal by what Google describes it as, you just have to be, honestly, relatively stupid not to be liberal. And to be conservative, you're against change. You're against the change that is needed for us to continue to grow. And then there's another thing, there was another idea that I wanted to talk about where, a lot of Republicans, they claim to be pro-life. Some libertarians that I know who vote Republican are true libertarians. They don't think that you should impede on a woman's agency over her own body. But I can see where, if our society recollects and regrows into a true social democracy where you have fewer people struggling, and it's easier for, say, a young woman in between the ages of 18 and even 26 to survive, if they have paid maternity leave, if they have health care, all that shit, then, I mean, now I'm still against the idea of telling a woman what she can and can't do with her body. However, I mean, I wouldn't freak out if a state decided to limit abortion to an extent, as there's less incentive to go out and get an abortion. Nowadays, people who are looking to get an abortion, they're freaking out. There's something going on, that they are uncomfortable with the idea of raising a child. And the reason I wouldn't be against the reason I would be against preventing a woman from getting an abortion fully, well, I mean, what happened with Roe v. Wade? Back in the day, women would just go out and, they'd figure it the fuck out. It doesn't matter whether or not it's legal or illegal, And oftentimes, women died, and it's pretty, it's the wrong thing to do. It's like the war on drugs. You can't tell somebody not to do drugs. You can't make drugs illegal and expect people not to do drugs. In a lot of cases, they're gonna be more likely to do drugs. So that's another policy where I believe that we should legalize, tax, and regulate drugs, and that would disincentivize the cartels from committing the crimes that incentivize their people to cross the border, that Republicans are now, since there's a Democrat in office, that they're freaking out over. It's not news, man. It's not news at all. So, yeah, in a sense, that would be pretty liberal, I guess, because I think it would ultimately fix the problem, and we'd be spending less on border security, and we'd be spending more on helping drug addicts. Because right now, a drug addict goes and tries to get help, and they're worried about, the cops catching on to them and them getting in trouble. And to me, that sounds, pretty libertarian in a sense. You can do what you want, so long as you're not harming others.